News, really. Walk me through it a little bit because I'm just hearing about this. So, in other words, it's a relationship between El Salvador and Lugano, Switzerland.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
okay. And so the country of El Salvador is effectively opening up a relationship with Lugano, kind of a sister Bitcoin city, because they recently made Bitcoin legal as well.
Absolutely. I think, some of the synergies and cooperations that we might look out for, El Salvador has always tried to be its own sovereign country. And obviously Switzerland has the greatest sovereignty in all of human history. So it's amazing to be able to match with them and be on this sort of the same playing field with them, trying to learn from them what they do and how they are able to make their own decisions without really caring about what the US, what the IMF, what the World Bank might say. That is true sovereignty. What Switzerland has is true sovereignty. So hopefully we can attract some of that way of thinking, some of that, actual freedom, freedom to choose, freedom to choose the path of your country. We know that El Salvador's government is really striving for that sort of next step to be more like Switzerland, to be more free. And hopefully this is the step to achieve that.
Right now, you were a natural choice for this because you've been spending several years in Switzerland working at a private equity group. You're Salvadoran and an educated man. And like so many in the country, you got to the point where, oh, the opportunities are outside of the country. But you're also part of this wave of folks that are thinking, you know what, actually, the opportunity is in El Salvador, especially with everything else that's going on around the world. Is that a fair characterization?
I would say it is, and one of the things that I find most interesting is that this is not something that it's just me. Not only I notice the fact that El Salvador is already becoming a place where you can find livable wages, a lot of opportunities, the land of opportunity. But so many other young people that graduated with me from school. I went to high school here in El Salvador. A lot of them are texting me all the time. Hey, we went to the US or to Europe to study, trying to find a job here and there. But then they realize that really, these countries are not what they promised to be. And El Salvador seems to be achieving what the government is promising to become this land of opportunities for young people. So I think that will be a very interesting development to look out for
You know, a lot of
more than actual performance, and usually benefit their own countries. Like in Switzerland, it usually has a very low political risk factor. And then they used to look into El Salvador and see this emerging economy with sure, potentially very high gains, but also an immense amount of risk. You mentioned it, 30 years of just a destroyed culture of nation, where we had a civil war. We then had, I don't know, what was it, 3, 4 legs of insanely corrupt governments that didn't work for the people. But now that image is sort of starting to change. Now other countries are calling our office. They're calling me. They're being like, hey, we're very interested in investing in El Salvador. We have noticed that the geopolitical diversification that El Salvador offers, and that risk adjustment, like in the sense where when you look at developed countries and what they're doing now, printing billions of money of currency, and essentially doing what put us in this position of high inflation, really crappy interest rates. They now see El Salvador as really the opportunity, some sort of haven to just come here and invest. And now they don't care that much about the risk, because the risk is no longer there. It's a safe country. You can walk outside, nothing is going to happen to you. 4 a.m., whatever time you want to walk outside, you can. It's very, the government is very, it facilitates foreign direct investments in such a way that I haven't seen any other country do this. Like, I've invested in the US for years, right? So I think like from a banking standpoint, that would be what we would tackle. Try to perform more carry trades. I remember one of my first deals with El Salvador was actually a carry trade, and it was from Switzerland. It was from a Swiss bank that obviously lends at a very attractive and competitive interest rate, and in comparison to Salvadoran banks that lend at a massive interest rate. So I would think that would be More realistically, aside from avocados, probably the thing to tackle. Try
Okay,
to
so
get
that's
some of
just a
that
matter
capital.
of capital,
Yeah,
having a large capital base,
yeah,
where from where you can do greater deals. So let me,
exactly.
this attack and the pushback on the gangs. We talked about it because the gang been around for now close to 30 years. Now, just the numbers. I'm curious how this all stacks up. So, El Salvador is roughly a $28 billion economy. My understanding is that the gangs are extorting something like 6 billion a year, nickel and diming pupusa sellers to the tune of $6 billion a year. The gangs have effectively been shut down. Is it correct for me to say that 6 billion in cash essentially has been injected into this $28 billion economy?
I think that would be the minimum of what is injected into the economy. The economy tends to be a very compounding financial sector if you want to look at it
Okay,
as a
so the
as a
second
company.
quarter they came in with a robust growth again, close to 3%. They did 10.3% last year. They're on track. They're not going to have a recession this year. They're going to have another boom year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed that banks. I had Salvadoran accounts, and they wouldn't let me do deals. They wouldn't let me transfer my money. They wouldn't let me purchase anything that was above $100,000, which at the time I really needed to do because I was starting my career. I was trying to grow my companies, and they just didn't let me do it. That's when I started to become familiar with self sovereignty, specifically the self sovereignty of money, being able to choose what you do with your own money. And that's when I found Bitcoin. And obviously, I bought Bitcoin a couple of months later after doing some research, after trying to understand how the candles move, which eventually proved worthless.
The trading aspect of it.
Yeah, the trading aspect of it. And then I just saw it as a simple haven for my money.
Right. So apparently, the president himself had a similar experience, noting the self sovereignty features of Bitcoin. So, as a diplomat, as this relationship between Lugano, Switzerland, and El Salvador is now birthed, where is the reciprocity? So, what kind of relationship was going to be happening here?
Well, so first of all, I hope that we're able to establish really clear cooperation mechanisms between private companies in El Salvador and private companies in Switzerland. So that's to start with. Just being able to get that capital flow going between both of those, particularly investment firms in Switzerland, and bringing the opportunity that El Salvador presents and the Salvadoran economy presents to them, and present it to them in a way that is unencumbered by all these political biases that we mentioned before. All these political kind of movements that have nothing to do with actual performance or health of a particular economy, but have more to do with whether we're following in line with what they want us to do. So I think that is I think that would be a key success factor to the success of Salvadoran companies when working with Swiss companies. Aside from that, we would also be establishing clear communication lines between government policymakers. So all the congressmen here in El Salvador, they are able